welcome to The Green Rush, a podcast about the intersection of cannabis, the capital markets, and culture. On a weekly basis, hosts Ann Donahoe and Louis Goldberg of KCSA Strategic Communications speak with the CEOs, financial experts, cultural icons, legislators, and generally interesting people moving the cannabis industry forward. This week, we unfortunately experienced some technical issues, so we're revisiting one of our more recent favorite episodes with U.S. Representative Earl Blumenauer, a House Democrat from Oregon. Congressman Blumenauer has represented Oregon for more than 20 years and has been a pivotal player in the national legalization movement since the beginning. He's also one of the founders and co-chairs of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus, a bipartisan caucus for members of the U.S. House of Representatives to discuss, learn, and work together to establish a better and more rational approach to federal cannabis policy. With 18 plus Democrats vying for the Democratic presidential nomination this primary election cycle, we wanted to revisit this conversation to see how influential leaders like Congressman Blumenauer envision the federal government moving ahead with cannabis legalization. Policy wonks, you're in for a treat, so lean in and enjoy.
So, Ann, it's really good to be talking to you today. Feels like we haven't done this in forever.
Forever.
And you, our loyal listeners, are getting a little extra love from us because
Louis screwed up.
I screwed up technically. Last week, so we're rebroadcasting an episode this week. But I have learned that I need to do the checklist that you put together, Ann. I thought I had it down, and I forgot to hit record on Skype. So we're going to re-record that episode next week. And I'm going to still ask our guests the same question that drives you nuts. I'm going to do the Marianne Ginger question.
If you don't like that, can you please send hate mail to Louis?
I like it. I think it's a good insight into
greenrush@kcsa.com. Knock that shit off.
You can even hashtag knock that shit off. All right. If we get two people who post on Twitter, not you, Ann, or Steven, they can't do that.
Mitch Wexler, are you listening?
No. Got to be a real listener, not somebody who's in line. But if we get two hashtags of knock that shit off to the @GreenRush on Twitter, I'll knock that shit off. But until then, I'm not. So we're recording this on March 19th, and some really interesting stuff is taking place today. New Jersey is actually voting in committee on whether or not to approve adult use cannabis.
Yeah, it seemed like kind of a bit of a shit show yesterday. Seems like the first the public could testify, then they couldn't, and then it was just a mess, but it looks like it's advanced. And I guess it's just a reminder that democracy is messy. No one seems uber happy, but I guess that means that the negotiations worked, maybe?
Ish. Yeah, I think everybody's happy that it's going to happen and that there are some really interesting components to the legislation that I find both great and disturbing. On the disturbing side, the no home grow really bothers me. And I know we represent a large number of big multi-state operators, and I truly believe that all of our clients are doing good things, but I don't get the no home grow angle. I just don't get it.
I mean, you can grow, you can make your own beer at home, you can make your own wine, and that's not going to stop you from going and buying a bottle or buying a 6-pack. It's just, it's silly, and it seems like
and with the beer and wine analogy, you can make it at home, but you can't turn around and sell it. And it's the same thing with home grow, right? If it's for consumption and not for sale, and it's legit medicine, why can't I grow it at home? And if it's legal for me to brew my own beer, I just don't get it. I have not heard a good argument against home grow in adult use states yet. And New York has it as well. I just don't understand it.
No, I don't either. And I think that it speaks to the big cannabis man coming in. And
And we
do,
represent
but-
big cannabis. We are big cannabis. But I also think that the social justice elements of the bill are pretty good. There's better social equity than in California or Nevada. They really have focused on giving access to people of color and people who have been incarcerated, access to participating in the industry better, I think, than many other states have.
Better, but it doesn't seem like the Black Caucus is happy, and I do think that it could go a bit further, but like I said, no one seems super happy with this, but I think it's a start.
Well, look, I live in New Jersey.
I was
You
in New
grew up
Jersey,
New
2 days
and have
ago.
Family there. So at the end of the day, I am happy with this. I am happy that my state will have a robust adult use market and that I can go shopping sometime, somewhere soon, and somewhere soon is probably late 2020, early 2021.
Well, they said if it passes, it could be about 6 months. I mean, for the existing dispensaries to flip to
Convert over.
To adult use. I mean, they have to make sure that they get the permission from the state and they've got enough service, or they've got enough on hand to service their medical patients first. But it could be, if it happens this week, it could be much sooner than you think. But
maybe, but I look at Massachusetts and they still don't have a fully implemented, even partially implemented adult use program, and they passed their law in 2016. So, I'm hoping, I don't got my fingers crossed, especially when it comes to New Jersey politics. I used to work in New Jersey politics. I've seen how the sausage is made. I don't work in politics anymore because I worked in New Jersey politics.
Well, and what I don't maybe you can help explain this to me. It seems like they need to get it done now, or else they won't bring it up until way later in the year because they don't want it to get, I guess, caught up in the budget and make it a bargaining chip. And
yeah.
I mean, that just seems like a big hot mess. So it seems like now is the time. And if not, it's just going to be hurry up and wait.
Look, Governor Murphy said he wanted it done in his first 100 days. We're at day 500 or something, or less, like 400 and something since he was elected. So, New Jersey is a weird state on many levels, but
we say that with love.
We do say it with love. I mean, there is actually a magazine called Weird Jersey that catalogs all the weird things about our state. But it is going to be a watershed moment in the Northeast. It will. I really believe that once this happens, that the rest of the Northeast and probably as far as Ohio will very quickly go adult use. New York will do it fast. I think Pennsylvania will have to do it fast. Connecticut will have to do it fast. Maryland will probably have to quickly convert. I mean, it should really be a major domino that takes the rest of the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, and the near Midwest into being adult use, which is just, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah. Well, and, we just booked Justin Zarimba, who is the editor for NJ Cannabis Insider, which is a great publication. If you're not subscribing to it, you should immediately do so. They're doing a great job. That's part of NJ.com. And he's going to be on to talk about it. So this will all have been voted on, and, the chips will have fallen by the time we talk to him next. So that's just something that we have to look forward to.
Yeah, and that episode should probably run the first week of April, on April 4th. So
yeah,
that's cool. We have anything else to talk about, or should we let our listeners hear me get berated?
So that's our update. Sorry about our technical issues. On to our interview from last fall with Representative Earl Blumenauer, where he yells at Lewis.
Which is like live hate mail, which is the best.
Have fun. Enjoy. Hi, Congressman. It's Ann Donahoe. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you taking the time. Let's jump right in. Let's talk about the memo earlier this week. You made news by issuing a really bold roadmap, very specific roadmap for Democrats to use for the new Congress. And you even said to Bloomberg that you think that cannabis will, quote, move in the next 6 months. Why do you feel like now was the time to issue that memo?
Well, this is the culmination for me of years of working on this issue. And I think we're watching it come to a head. We're having 4 more elections this fall. In fact, I'm in Missouri tomorrow campaigning for their ballot measure. We have more candidates than ever before that are actually talking about this. We have had remarkable progress despite the unrelenting opposition of the Republican leadership in Congress. We now have virtually every Democrat on board, and we have several dozen Republicans. The major roadblocks have been 3 people. I mean, it's the Republican head of the Judiciary Committee, Bob Goodlatte, the Republican Speaker, Paul Ryan, and the Republican chair of the Rules Committee, Pete Sessions, who've been just thwarting our efforts. And 2 of the 3 are not coming back. And candidly, I think Pete Sessions is in the race of his life, in part because he's been the number 1 enemy of marijuana reform in Congress. And there's a very good chance that Democrats will take control. So I think it's all teed up, ready to go. We have more support from the public than ever before. We have 3 states that are going to, 2, maybe 3 states that will be added to the column, and it looks like we've worked out a deal in Utah. The time is right.
So this is Lewis speaking, Congressman. And over the last couple months, I've said repeatedly that I think that we're going to see an October surprise related to cannabis specifically, that because of what happened with GW Pharma and the FDA's approval of Epidiolex, that the president will do something, whether it be deschedule or reschedule or do something that he'll be able to claim that he legalized cannabis. Do you see something like that happening before the midterms, or do you think I'm just kind of talking out my butt?
Well, I can't imagine anybody who knows what this guy's going to do.
I don't think he knows what he's going to do.
Well, that's the case. But I think it would, they have an administration that has been decidedly unfriendly. They have had opportunities for 20 months to make a difference, and they haven't. They've allowed Jeff Sessions to cast a cloud. I'll tell you, the October surprise is that we're going to elect the most pro-cannabis Congress in history, and we're starting from a pretty good space. We will have more successes at the ballot box that follow up on success after success we've had around the country. The October surprise is that the people will speak, and we're going to be in a position to be able to act on the outline that I put out this week.
Well, I like that October surprise much better than I like Lewis's idea of an October surprise.
Trust me, me too.
But worst case scenario, and I certainly don't mean to be negative because I do really believe in this blue wave and that there's a lot of energy in the Democratic base. But let's say the Democrats don't win the House and there's no October surprise. Do you think that your colleague, Representative Dana Rohrabacher, is right when he says that Trump and the Republicans will get this done in 2019?
Well, the table is set, and we have seen remarkable progress. But if they continue to have leadership that is opposed to us, like Pete Sessions, this was teed up. There was no reason that this should have been a problem. As you know, my veterans access legislation passed both the House and the Senate last Congress. We should have been able to move. One of the things I've worked very hard when I established the Cannabis Caucus was to make it bipartisan. I cooperate with any member of the House in either party, and in fact, people in the Senate who are advancing legislation that's consistent with our principles. As a practical matter, the Republicans have been very, very hard to read, and their leadership has been hostile. There was a chance for people to have forced this earlier. I hope that regardless of who's in charge, that we move forward with my blueprint. I just know that if Democrats are in charge, it's much more likely to happen.
Has leadership, when they saw the blueprint, did they say, "Yeah, we're in," or were they because all of the polling says that bipartisan Republicans, Democrats, self-proclaimed conservatives or progressives, everybody supports cannabis either from a medicinal or an adult use perspective. But the Democratic leadership doesn't seem to have embraced it. It's not like Nancy Pelosi is out there running on this issue. So when you issued the memo, what did the leadership say?
Well, I mean, understand in this climate, when there are hundreds of millions of dollars that are being spent to misrepresent the Democratic positions and to attack candidates. I mean, look at Beto O'Rourke, who has been consistent back 10 years ago when he was a city council person in El Paso, believing that we ought to reform marijuana legislation. And Ted Cruz and Dark Money are pretending like he wants to somehow legalize every single drug, get rid of all controls, be able to assault our families. I mean, that is what the other side would do if they were given an opening. And candidly, I understand that Nancy Pelosi is not saying this is a major priority. That's all you'd hear for 2 weeks, misrepresenting what she said and what she believes in. Go look at Nancy's record. She has supported every single one of our votes on the floor of the House. She has been clear that she thinks that reform makes sense. But I think she shouldn't say that this is a major priority. It doesn't. It's not my number one priority, but it is important to do, and we can do more things than one at a time. So we can deal with the healthcare crisis, deal with the immigration crisis, deal with the fact that America's infrastructure is falling apart, and still follow the outline that I presented. There's an opportunity for each committee over the next few months of the new Congress to be able to lay the groundwork for this. Many of these things are teed up and ready to go. So I think one of the first things that will happen deals with the insanity of forcing state legal marijuana businesses to be conducted on an all-cash basis. Now, I've been working in this space for years. I have traveled from Bangor, Maine to Santa Barbara. I've worked on the ballot measures. I've never met a single person who thinks that state legal cannabis businesses should be conducted on an all-cash basis. The notion that we have people with backpacks and shopping bags full of $20 bills scurrying around every day is lunacy. It's not safe. It doesn't make sense from a business perspective. And if you really care about law enforcement, it's an invitation to tax evasion and money laundering. We've got legislation ready to go with Ed Perlmutter and Denny Heck from Colorado and from Washington State, both on the Financial Services Committee. I think when we're in charge, that legislation moves in a matter of months.
So this issue has really brought to light the concept that politics makes strange bedfellows, and your partnership with Congressman Rohrabacher, and then the forward-looking positions that Congressman Corbello or David Joyce from Ohio have taken, they're all relatively very conservative Republicans, and other than you and just a handful of others, it doesn't really feel like the Democrats have embraced this issue with open arms. I'm joking that they should be holding a plant, running to the polls with it, but they're not. And again, the polling is so strongly in favor, especially amongst Democrats, of this issue. I just don't. I wish I could understand more why the Democrats as a party aren't embracing this, because it hits on social justice, it hits on tax, it hits on money for infrastructure, all that stuff.
Well, I reject the premise. There are a number of Democrats who, in fact, embrace full legalization. Virtually all of them support medical marijuana. Look at the number of candidates running around the country. It's just not true that there aren't a wide variety of Democrats who are there and who are supportive. And in the Senate, Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren, my own senator, actually both my senators, Jeff Merkley and Ron Wyden, have been extraordinarily supportive. It is what we see with Tim Walz, who's running for governor of Minnesota, but having advanced on the Veterans Committee, moving for marijuana research. Barbara Lee. I mean, there are candidates and members of Congress who have been very clear and very forceful. Hakeem Jeffries, Jerry Nadler. I reject the proposition. Now, part of it is that there's a lot of issues that people are contending with, and there is a crisis every day, from Donald Trump setting his hair on fire and trying to put it out with a hammer.
That's a great image.
Well, I mean, so there is literally a crisis a day. But if you look at where the candidates stand, if you look at where our members have voted and what they believe in, and the legislation that they've co-sponsored, I mean, there is a wide variety of legislation. We have something like over 30 pieces of legislation in the House, and majority of the people who are supporting these are Democrats. Now, I encourage the work with Carlos and Dave and Dana. That's good, and I have worked with them at every turn, because we're trying to get something through this Republican Congress that has sort of shut us down. But I'm sorry. I've talked to, I've sent material and engaged over 90 Democrats running for Congress. I know where they're at, and a number of them are, in fact, talking about it. They support it. They're not ducking it on the campaign trail. But again, the same point that the climate that we have now, it's so easy to mischaracterize what people have said and what they believe. And if somebody claimed that this was, their number one priority, or even one of the top priorities, they would have this millions of dollars of dark money misrepresent what they said and what they believe, and create problems for them. They don't need to do that. We don't need them to do that to be successful. We just need people to be clear, to support simple common sense things for the industry, to make sure that they support eliminating the banking problems, the way the federal government gets in there, interferes with research, uh, the veterans access issue. People stand behind the simple common sense steps that are in the blueprint that I outlined, and I think you will see support for moving it forward.
Congressman, you're spending a lot of time this week in Missouri on the campaign trail, and you've said that if Missouri is willing to support medical marijuana, you think the tide will change nationally and that we're in the home stretch. Why Missouri? And I guess my follow-up there is, why do you think the federal government as a whole has been so far behind this particular issue? And not just in the era of Trump, but why couldn't Obama get it done either? I guess that's a big question, but take it piece by piece, however you like.
What you have on the federal level, let me take these in reverse order. On the federal level is the legacy of Richard Nixon weaponizing the opposition to marijuana reform. He rejected the recommendation of his own Blue Ribbon Commission, chaired by the governor of Pennsylvania, for heaven's sakes, who concluded, that the concerns about cannabis are overblown, that it's no more harmful than many things that are legal, in fact, less harmful than things that are legal, like cigarettes. Nixon
or alcohol.
Decided for purely political reasons that he was going to demonize young people and people of color with marijuana and his war on drugs. And that's been deeply embedded, and it was continued with Reagan. Republicans in Congress at every turn. We've spent $1 trillion on this. Obama, to his credit, when we had the election in 2012, he indicated he had bigger fish to fry. He wasn't going to interfere, even though it wasn't legal under federal statute. Under his watch, the Cole memo was promulgated. There was Treasury guidance. It was kind of live and let live, and as long as people followed the rules, the federal government wouldn't interfere with them. I had hoped that we might go further, but the fact is that the decision that Obama made, and the fact that he was the first president of the United States to tell the truth. Yeah, I smoked marijuana, and frankly, it was less dangerous than stuff that was legal. I just think that we're watching these pieces come together. They've been building. The reason I pointed out the significance of Missouri, that's the show me state, right? It's in the heartland. It's a political battlefield. And there's lots of dark money and other things flowing around. And you've got 3 flipping ballot measures, including one that was written by a guy who would make himself the cannabis czar, which is sort of weird. But if in Missouri, that with all the political cross currents, if the show me state goes ahead, which I think it will, and approves ballot measure 2, I think it's an important signal to more of middle America. Where we've won the coast, we've won a number of more progressive states. If Missouri comes on board, I think other dominoes will fall.
So this week, we're recording this on October 19th, was a huge week for cannabis. And some would say maybe the biggest week yet in the history of the legalization movement, with Canada going federally legal on October 17th. Do you think this is going to have any impact on our policy, whether it be from a financial services perspective or anywhere at the federal level? I mean, can the Trump administration look to Trudeau and say yes or no?
Well, you're right. This has been a huge week. When Canada went full legal on October 17th. This is only the second country. And Canada is a sophisticated, rich, forward-thinking country. but it's not uniformly progressive for the administration, the government to campaign on legalization and then to follow through on it is extraordinarily significant. And it's already having an effect in the United States. You look at what's happening with companies that have operations on both sides of the border, taking advantage of Canada being able to have listings on their stock exchange for cannabis companies. People are investing in one another. It's the Canadian border goes along virtually, I think all but two of the states have medical or adult use, from Washington to Maine. It's opened the eyes and the opportunity for joint investment. I think this is extraordinarily significant.
So,
at the same time, we're looking at interest in Mexico. They're interested in legalization. The notion of a North American cannabis coalition is, I think, remarkable.
you mentioned the border, and there have been now a series of Canadians who have been stopped at the border who work in the industry, and Americans, and we know some of our clients have actually been stopped at the border who are C-suites in public American companies. What's going on there? I mean, is this Jeff Sessions? Is this Donald Trump? I mean, why is this happening?
Well, part of the problem is this misdirected war on drugs gives people, the American authorities at the border, the right to deny permanently entry in the United States for anyone who admits that they've used marijuana. Problems with people who are in the marijuana business. That's why I introduced what I call the Maple Act this week. Announced it. We'll introduce it when we're back in session. That would fix this. Because one of the reasons we announced it this week when Canada went full legal is that there are a lot of people that do not know that they're at risk. They don't have to answer that question from the Border Patrol. But if they do answer it truthfully and admit to using cannabis, they can be denied entry to the United States for life. So we need to have people be aware of this. And then we need to, I think most members of Congress were unaware. And I think this is one of the pieces of legislation that we'll be able to move pretty quickly to fix, because it's insane. People who are involved in a legal business or people who are taking their medicine being denied entry in the United States for the rest of their life, nobody wants that. And I think this is an example of something we'll be able to change, and it's why I introduced the Maple Act.
Congressman, we have 2 more questions for you. Do you have 5 more minutes for us?
I'm going to have to wrap this up because I'm running out of voice.
Okay. So one more quick question. We have a new segment on the show that we call While You Were Sleeping. Can you tell us one thing that the public or press is missing when it comes to cannabis? In other words, what's the one story that you wish you were reading in the Oregonian, but you are not?
Well, what I just said about the really remarkably foolish policy that will deny entry of people in the United States from Canada who take their medicine. I think that is outrageous. I think people don't know. I think the more people understand, the easier it will be to change. And I think this is an example of the incremental progress that we make. And when these dominoes start falling, with the passage of my Maple Act, the Veterans Access legislation, the banking, we start getting the momentum, and I think these things will pass not only through the House, but through the Senate, and set the stage for the ultimate treatment of marijuana like we treat alcohol, states will do what they want as long as they follow reasonable regulations. They're reasonably transparent, and I think America's ready for it.
Well, Congressman, thank you so much for giving us this time. We really appreciate it. And by the way, the question I asked about the thesis, which you completely corrected me on, was hopefully taken as a setup, because it is great to see that the Democrats are embracing, forward thinking, and truly embracing the issue. And you have been a phenomenal advocate, so thank you very much.
I think you're going to like the new class of Democrats being elected, and I think they're going to help us get where we need to be.
Excellent. Awesome. We can't wait. Go vote, everyone listening.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Congressman.
Good afternoon.
Thanks to Congressman Earl Blumenauer of Oregon. We will have links to everything that we talked about, from his memo to his legislation matrix to the MAPLE Act in our show notes. Make sure you go vote, go register to vote, find out where you're supposed to vote, do your research, be a good citizen. For more on the congressman in general, head over to earlblumenauer.com or check him out on Twitter at @RepBlumenauer. Or if you want to chat with us, you can always find us on Instagram and Twitter with the handle at KCSA_cannabis, as well as KCSA-cannabis.com. Or you can email Lewis at greenrush@kcsa.com. He loves hate mail.
I got my first piece of hate mail. It was awesome.
So exciting.
I was so exciting.
And don't forget to subscribe to The Green Rush in your favorite podcatcher. That's One Take Shay, One Take.